And also that it was painful to do this because I realized in the process that really all of my thinking and writing about photographs and the archives of photographs that I'm working on is done in sets. It's really about multiples, it's really about the relationality of different images to one another. So the caveat is that I was very disciplined to do this, but it feels sometimes, I feel sometimes as if the the presentation can't quite do what it would do if I were to set these images in relation to others. So that is the background on this. And the other caveat is simply that it's really a work in progress that is sort of still forming. And I solicit any kinds of input suggestions you have. So, spring or fall 1943. 3 soldiers, brothers in arms, stoic, taciturn, perhaps, identically placed caps, belts, buckles, and boots signal military uniformity. Hands clasped behind backs, erect, feet planted deliberately astride, neither iconic nor heroic or ceremonious. They capture an ordinary moment in the lives of soldiers, idle and at ease. In the background, an unidentified structure surrounded by trees. A sunny day? Perhaps. Difficult to judge in the sepia tones of the photograph. The warm glow of light from fuzzy branches moves our attention downward to the face of the young man at the left of the photo. Like his compatriots, his eyes are fixed intently on the camera. Unlike them, his expression seems just on the verge of a smile. The slight upward turn at the corner of the mouth gives an impression of satisfaction, of barely suppressed mirth percolating just beneath the surface of a more serious facade. It cracks the solemnity and solidity of military performance this photograph presents, leading us to other ruptures in the image's composition. The image offers contradictory signs of unanimity. Military uniforms intended to camouflage, erase, or dissolve distinction, amplify difference in the process. For what is as striking as the apparent youth, and dare I say it, the innocence of this whiskerless trio, are the chromatics of their constellation. Left to right, a brunette, a blonde, and their darker-skinned companion. Shot somewhere along Germany's eastern border, in or near Poland, the photograph was the property of the brown-skinned young man at the right of the frame. What happens when we linger on such images? What do they reveal, and what do they simultaneously conceal in the very moment of revelation? What invisible forms of labor, domestic labor, semiotic labor, affective labor, do they make visible? And what are the technologies of vision, politics of reading, and practices of archiving that render this labor legible? Put another way, how do these photos register? Or how does this photo register? Certainly, or at least at first glance, it registers through the uniform. The unitary presentation of military membership signifies affiliation. The uniform trumps all other visible signs of difference as a marker of subordination to the protection of country, kin. Or does it? For what if that country is Nazi Germany, and what if that kin is the self-styled Aryan race? Visualizing a configuration of both affiliation and distinction, the image simultaneously displays and suppresses relations of difference that challenge our ability to pinpoint exactly how and where we see race, and whether that perception is ever either solely or primarily about vision or visibility at all. Lingering on the image is a photo of Hans Hauck, an Afro-German man born in 1920, an individual whose life I've explored in detail elsewhere. Hauck was born in Frankfurt, Germany, and grew up in Saarbrücken. He spent most of his life there until late in the Second World War, and eventually returned several years after the war ended. He lived out the rest of his life in his hometown in Ludweiler until his death in 2002. This photo pictures Hauck with his army buddies following his induction into the German Wehrmacht in 1942. It is a photo he nicknamed 3 soldiers named Hans, an image of himself and 2 close friends who share his name. In it, the army uniform is an overwhelming index that steers us as viewers through an unambiguous reading of the photo. As a snapshot taken by and of soldiers in wartime, it seamlessly references forms of participation, implication, and complicity in militarism, nationalism, and war. But rather than moving in for a closer look, perhaps we should first step back in order to appreciate more of the script this image writes for us. Stepping back, what is not at all apparent in this image of a typical German soldier is the fact that he was the child of a German mother and an Algerian soldier stationed in Germany as part of the French colonial forces deployed in the occupation of the Rhineland following the First World War. It tells us nothing of the public and diplomatic controversy surrounding this cohort of children and the ensuing propaganda campaign waged in German, French, and British newspapers that denounced the presence of these African troops and their biracial offspring as, quote, the black scourge of European culture and civilization and the degradation of the white race. It gives us no indication of the fact that roughly 9 years earlier, the youthful soldier pictured in the photo was sterilized as one of the so-called Rhineland bastards, vilified both in the interwar years and later in the Nazi regime. Here we must give voice to another dimension of the photograph's impact, for the addition of this historical framing initiates a subtle shift in our view of the image. We refocus our gaze on skin color, hair texture, and the question of blackness. We attempt to apply our own regional and cultural criteria for assessing race as blackness. Question the optics of the photograph's rendering of race, some might ask how black, brown, or colored was he. One strains to see how this photo might register the traces of race or the historical moment at which it was taken. Do we see in it the imprint of the black horror deprived at the time of his birth? Does it color or inscribe him as a Rhineland bastard, a discourse we assume indelibly shaped and circumscribed his life at his time? The historical framing of such an image invites and emboldens a desire to explain, to challenge, or dismiss the racialized experiences of individuals like the soldier on the basis of his appearance. It is a phenomenon I have encountered on multiple occasions in discussions of how his life and experiences voiced all too frequently in the nearly inevitable response, he doesn't really look that black anyway. So how black actually was he? In these cases, the photographic image works together with the details of Hauk's biography and our own understandings of what constitutes a black subject to shift our focus to the issue of racial subjection and persecution. The simple fact and the date of the circumstances of Hauk's birth in Germany as a child of the infamous Rhineland occupation acts as a kind of caption, an almost unavoidable historical captioning that attempts to fix a particular meaning to the image. Viewed against this historical backdrop, the photo seems to authorize the questioning of the subject's authenticity and to search for a way of disputing the legitimacy of his claim to racialized subjection based on our own ability or inability to see him as black. How should we read the desire to visualize race in this image? We must read it through three crucial registers: its historical registers, its affective registers, and its archival registers. The desire to visualize race registers historically as a desire to see Hauk's heritage as a child of an African occupation soldier and to reconcile it with the militarized National Socialist subject pictured in this image. Yet the photo registers with equal force affectively as an image that constitutes its subject through the cultivation of a nurturing gaze that constructs a domestic relationship between the image and its viewer. Despite the absence of overt family signifiers, this photo creates a domestic relationship with the intimate frame that structures its composition and circulation. We are drawn to it by its relation to so many other photos like it, images of brothers and sons, siblings and lovers. We are drawn to it by its figuration of friendship and camaraderie. Its documentary impulse was motivated by an intention to connect, by a desire to image affiliation. This photo is made to be shared both within this friendship circle and beyond it. In Imperial Leather, Anne McClintock argues that domesticity is both a space and, more importantly, a social relation to power. Taking McClintock's work as a point of departure, Laura Wexler highlights the function of domestic photography as one critical symbolic resource through which the meaning of the domestic is constituted. Quote, domestic images may be, but need not be, representations of and or a so-called separate sphere of family life. Domestic images may also be configurations of familiar and intimate arrangements intended for the eyes of others, or metonymical references to unfamiliar arrangements intended for domestic consumption. What matters is the use of the image to signify the domestic realm. Domestic signifiers are generated through what McClintock calls processes of social metamorphosis and political subjection. As both Wexler and McClintock emphasize, multiple vectors, chief among these gender, race, class, and nation, must converge in order for the character of domesticity to emerge. The image I present to you today witnesses the creation of a racialized national subject who emerges from the domestic gaze solicited in the frame of this mundane depiction of three soldiers at ease who share the name Hans.